Hey team, I'm going to show you how you can edit the blueprint. So we're currently looking at the financial planning jobs, and there will also be further mortgage services jobs, and there are going to be job names in here. We've got some test samples in here at the moment, and the blueprint is this current state with transitions. So it allows you to move this job through these specific pipelines, and then prompts are alerted to you whenever you click on any of these buttons, or it moves into a different state, etc., etc. And to modify and change some of this stuff, what we need to do is we need to click on settings in the top right hand corner, and we need to go down to the left hand side to blueprint. And in this list at the moment there is only one, but in the future there will be several when you're looking at it. But you'll need to find the blueprint that you're looking for, and this will obviously tell you what module it's part of here and whether or not it's active on that right hand side. If you need to turn it off at any stage, you can turn it off immediately by clicking that button. So we click on the link and this will load up this page here for us to be able to view, and it's quite graphical and very nice looking. Bear in mind, the bigger the blueprint gets, the laggier the system becomes. It is a cloud-based system, so it's very intuitive and it's very responsive. But unfortunately, Google Chrome or your web browser may lag out when making too many changes in one instance. So please be very mindful to not try to make several changes and keep going. Try to make one or two small changes and then click the republish button down the bottom left-hand corner. And when you do that, it's going to pop up with a box saying, do you want all existing jobs in the system to be migrated onto the new saved records? Because you can grandfather this existing workflow for old jobs. And that is a choice that you need to make. Bear in mind, if you do choose to change it to the new blueprint for grandfathering all of the old accounts onto the new blueprint, if you deleted a transition and a state, the system's going to say that it's going to search and look for jobs that were in that state. Okay, and if there were jobs in that state and you deleted that state, it's going to ask you, where do you want those jobs to go to into a new state? Like, which state do you want it to go to next? And you'll have to define that immediately when you press this republish button. So just be very mindful that it may prompt you for that, and you're going to have to move all the existing jobs from that state to a new state. Whether you created a new state or whether or not it's just been abolished and they need to move to the next position, you just need to be mindful that you will be prompted for that if you are not going to grandfather the blueprint. The next thing I need to show you in here is what is the difference between a state, a transition, and these blue transitions. First of all, a state is going to be essentially in a white box like this with multiple little boxes on the side here that you can pull and drag into an area. And this means that you can set it to that specific state, i.e., existing job, and then you can go home for the weekend. And then when you come back on Monday, that job record that you're working on will be sitting in the existing job state. Okay? And then what happens is the button that you're able to click next is going to be what you call a transition. So if we go back onto one of these specific financial planning jobs, and that was not a good example, we will go back into this one. You'll see here that you are able to click a button. So the current state is amend ROA. The next button is called amendments completed. So whoever's working on this job record is then going to select amendments completed as they've done that task. And then something else is going to happen from there. Okay? I'm going to go into that in a minute. Now you have an option to now click review completed, and then you also have ROA approved from there. So you can always cancel a job in most instances and close the job off and cancel it. Okay? And when you do that, you'll probably be prompted with a reason why. Now, you'll see here that an existing job doesn't appear to have a transition to move into meeting confirmed. It's an interesting scenario here, but what Zoho Blueprints does is these things here are called a common transition. So the transition is a transition, but these are called a common transition. What that means is that you can select this button from multiple different avenues. And be mindful, this is a very concerning issue for some people with this, is that as you can see here, this common transition should only be available for existing job. Nowhere else should it come back to meeting booked at the top here. And as you can see, there's all these other green lines on the screen. The problem with this, and I need to highlight this, is that when you create a common transition here, if I go down here and start making more transitions and more states down here, every time I make a new state, and to do that, you click the plus button on the right-hand side here, and yes, there are some defaulted ones already here because they're either obsolete or not being used or got spelling errors. But when you click the plus button to add a new state, by default, it will automatically add that that state into the existing common transition. It is a pain, but please be mindful of this, because if you keep editing this blueprint further down here and renaming and rewording some stuff, you will break the transitions at the top. It is the biggest thing you're going to need to know. So in this instance, we need to click meeting booked, and we need to click on include all states. And this drop down is going to come up. It's going to show us all the states that's available to be selected, which is every state in this entire thing. We need to click the minus button, which is going to deselect everything. And then we're going to find existing job. There it is there. And we're going to tick existing job. And that is it. Now you see the green line. So if I hover my mouse over meeting book, now we can see that existing job is going to marry into that transition. The second thing is you're going to want to know, why is it that there's no line between existing job and that unless I hover my mouse over it? I don't know. I hope that Zoho obviously kind of fix this because it is a little bit confusing. But in saying that, this meeting booked is only one area for you to manage. If the company changes its processes or its checklist or its assignment rule on this one transition, then it doesn't matter whether you're coming through a new job or you're coming through an existing job. You are going to be able to come down and edit this specific transition, and it will affect both of these at the same time. And that's why common transitions are brilliant, because you only have to manage that transition once. An example is down here further where we actually have essentially this amendments required. And theoretically, we had this period where this is actually going, at one stage, we had this going back up into here because we ran out of transitions, okay? And a perfect example is right here. So amendments completed. So there's a common transition there for that. And that's an interesting one because that's also going to too many. It should only be coming from one. So we just need to go through and untick all those as well. Okay. So amendments required. So that's a common transition and that's working there. So that'll just go up to that and you just manage and maintain that checklist. However, if we come over here, we've ran out of transitions now because unfortunately in a blueprint, you can only do 5 transitions. So here we have amendments required for an ROA, but I cannot make this one a common transition. I've had to create its own separate transition. So if you have a checklist, which is in this checklist here, this transition, there's a checklist and a change of ownership here, you will also need to update this one as well. And that's why transitions are great, because you only have to update it once. Okay, but in this instance, you're going to have to be mindful that you need to update it twice. These are just little small things that you need to understand. Okay, the next thing is we want to know, how do we update fields, or we send emails automatically, etc. You can only do that on transitions, which is the green ones, so or the blue ones. So we need to select on that transition, And on the right-hand side, we can rename the transition, okay, which is only limited characters as well. Keep that in mind. And in here, we are able to change or update stuff. So when you click the button, we can make notes mandatory. We can make attachments as mandatory. We can click the add button and then we can do message associated items, checklists. We can create checklists and things like that. We can also go over here to after, which means after you've clicked the button and the record refreshes on the screen, what is it going to do? Email notifications, we can assign tasks and create tasks. We can update fields. Webhooks and custom actions is a little bit more hardcore coding in the software world. And also then we have tags. You can add a tag to a record, and a tag is just at the top here on that record, and you can just say, you know, Ben's Ridge or something like that, and tag it like that, and then you can just click save. And it's just a real quick, short thing that you can see on the screen at the top of any record. You can add and remove them as you need to. When you want to change the ownership, you need to do this thing called field updates, because the ownership field is actually, which is this here, which is called owner. So it's the module name and then owner. And if you click that, it'll like this little search button comes up, and you can click on that little search button and you can select the user who's going to be, this job record is going to be moved to. And that's how you update that. Try to be a bit descriptive on the name when you're putting it in there, like why is it getting moved to that person's name, or who is it getting moved to, or what team is it getting moved to. Try and be a bit descriptive around it. That way in the future when people are using the system, they can kind of have a little bit of commentary around what they're doing.